Basically, it began in the summer of 2009, and it's created in memory of my mother, who died of a brain tumour at the end of 2008. And my mother was an English teacher. And anyone who has lost somebody to cancer will understand the deterioration of what happens to that person. And after I lost her, I suffered depression and was in a very hard time in my life. And I began to create these photographs sort of as a hobby on the side, as a way of dealing with my grief. And the project spiraled out of control. I was still working as a fashion designer at the time, and it became this epic 5-year journey, which relates back to the stories that my mother read to me as a child. The pictures that I produced, they're not a recreation of stories that already exist. What it's about is about the memories of the times that I had with her. It was a happier memory, basically. And so they relate back to the original book illustrations, the moments of happiness that I had with her, but also it catalogues my own personal narrative through grief. So it's a very, very personal project.
Well, let's have a look. This is one of the images of which we have plenty to talk about. Yeah. So tell us about them.
This particular image is called The Storyteller. One thing that people are so excited about the project and seeing the work is that they're actually entirely real images. In a time where people use manipulation in computers, I construct all of these photographs for real out in the landscape, like miniature film sets. So everything you see here was a built set, and I found this location the year beforehand and had to wait an entire year for the flowers to bloom again. So everything that I do is truly faithful. This particular character is just one of the many that's in the series that's all part of a greater story. There are actually 74 photographs in the entire collection.
Let's move on to the next image that we can get up here. Oh, there we are. So quite theatrical, aren't they? So this one, I assume, is in a studio rather than outside.
Yes, it's one of the few, because actually almost the entire series is all shot outdoors. I think there's only about 5 that were actually shot indoors. But this one is the White Queen, and I make every single thing within the photograph. So I made the key, the necklace, the corset. It's very, very crafted, every single piece.
So then you get a sense of why this project took you 5 years. If you're taking that much attention to detail and making things from scratch, it just must have become a full-time job.
Oh, absolutely. And this was the thing that happened. So it started as a little summer project, and I had no comprehension of how far it was going to develop. And like I say, there's 74 pieces in the series, and it's now taken 5.5 years, and some of the photographs have taken up to 5.5 months to produce one single shot. So they're enormous productions.
So when you say 5.5 months, do you mean making things, waiting for things to come into bloom, for example?
Well, because, I mean, it's funny, when people ask me, do I consider myself a photographer, I consider myself actually an artist with a camera, because 75% of the work that I do is creating the costumes, the props, the sets, all entirely by hand, then taking that out into the landscape, constructing it, and then I use photography to record that body of work.
Because I think actually we have some video of sort of just a kind of an essence of what goes on behind the scenes, of which you've captured as well. I mean, it looks like a fashion shoot. It has a sense of that sort of storytelling that fashion does, but obviously on a bit of a more dramatic scale.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, I was a fashion designer for 11 years, and I started this project when I was, but then I gave up to commit myself to the future of this project and producing this series. So undeniably there is an element of fashion in it, but the meanings behind the pictures and the origins of the project are deeply, deeply emotional, and there's a huge amount of, you know, meaning behind each single image. So people do relate to them as fashion in some ways, but in other ways I like to see them as slices of miniature film.
Now, this exhibition opens today in Dean Street, is that right?
Dover Street.
Dover Street, sorry, I began with Dean, I got it confused. So the idea is also that you're going to launch a book, but I understand you're funding this in a different way.
Well, this is the really exciting thing, is that the series has an enormous international fan base all over the world who've been religiously following the project for 5.5 years, with 250,000 on Facebook. And over the production of this series, I've met with publishers, and everyone's always wanted a different take on the book. And because this is such a personal book dedicated to my mother, I've decided I've come this far, I've made this work, now I want to make the book that is truly reflects my personal love for it, and the fans as well. So I'm going to self-publish, and I'm going to launch a major Kickstarter, and I'm really excited to say that I'm going to be teaming up with esteemed British book designer Stuart Smith, who's produced books for the Tate Modern, Prince Charles, Magnum Agency, so we're going to make something really special.